So today we have Dr. Frank Lipman. Now, Dr. Lipman is New York-based American celebrity doctor. He is a leader in the functional medicine space and a New York Times best-selling author of many books. And I think it's up to 7 or 8 books now from when looking on Google. Is that right, Dr. Lipman?
Well, 5 out, 6 ones coming out in October, and 7th one in May next year.
Okay, so there we go. He's a New York Times best-selling author, but most importantly, he's got some South African roots. And so welcome to the show, Dr. Lipman. Really, it's an honor and it's a privilege. I've been inspired by your story. You have gone from medical school to sangomas, to Chinese medicine, to nutrition. Here is a lifelong learner, and so welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Good.
And I don't have some South African roots. I am South African.
You're still South African. They haven't converted you to American yet, although you spent a large part of your life in America. Tell us your story, how you've managed to touch all these different areas of health. You've almost specialized in everything.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but so I qualified. I grew up in South Africa in the 50s and 60s and qualified from WITS in 1979.
Okay.
And then I did a year of internship at Gwyneth in internal medicine, or what, I don't know, can't remember, actually medicine and gynecology. And then in those days you had to go to the army. So I chose to go, in those days, there were homelands. And if you went to the army, you could work at an army base, or you could go work in the bush, because the government wanted to show the people how good the army was to them. So I chose to go work in the bush, and I happened to go to Kwandebele, which is about 2.5 hours north of Johannesburg. And I had been exposed to sangomas actually at Gwyneth, because when we couldn't help patients, the family used to call the sangoma in. And I noticed that sometimes the sangoma helped and we couldn't. And although I came from a medical family, I thought it was all bullshit and quackery. I thought it was very interesting. And then when I was working in Kwandebele for 18 months, I got exposed to sangomas again. And I was really interested in the whole social, cultural aspect. I was quite intrigued by African culture. So I used to go and hang out and see and speak to them and watch what was going on. And once again, I noticed that people were getting better. Some of the same patients we were seeing and we weren't helping. So that sort of opened my mind to there must be some other ways of seeing medicine. And then I came back, and I always wanted to leave South Africa. I didn't want to live under apartheid. And then I landed in America, and I'm living under apartheid here. It's worse than it was in South Africa. But anyway, that's another story. So I worked, when I came back from Kwandebele, I worked in a private practice in Johannesburg for Paul Davis. I was working with him as a doctor. And he had a practice which was full of all the lefties and the artsy community. And people were coming in, and they had seen, there was one acupuncturist in town at that time, and they were seeing that acupuncturist, and they were coming in. They said their pain had gotten better, or their headaches had gotten better. They were seeing a homeopath. Homeopathy was big in those days. I don't know if it's still big. And they were telling me the homeopathy helped them. And I went to Paul Davis, who's the doctor I was working with, and I said, Paul, what the hell's going on? Yeah, I'm trained in this medicine. I can't help these people. They're coming in with headaches and they can't poop. And this quackery is helping. What's the story? So he said something interesting to me. He said, your job is just to listen to people and support them and be there for them, because people get better in spite of all the medicine we give them. And if people are getting better with this other stuff, that's fantastic. So that sort of started my journey questioning. And when I left South Africa in 1984, he gave me a book called The Barefoot Doctor's Manual. And he said, you should go study acupuncture. So this was in 1984. I knew nothing about acupuncture except seeing these patients in the practice. And he happened to give me this going away present. I don't know if you know the Barefoot Doctor's Manual, but it's sort of a...
Yeah, it's a
Anyway, so I landed in New York in 1984, and I'd been sponsored for a green card in the South Bronx in New York City, which was a burnt out area. That's why I got a green card, because American doctors didn't want to work there. In those days, that area was full of heroin addicts and crack addicts. It was burnt out. It was a really rough area. And because American doctors didn't want to work there, I'd passed my American exams. They could sponsor me for a green card. So I didn't know any better, and I started, took the green card, and I started doing a residency there. And after about 2 weeks of my residency, I realized I didn't want to be a doctor in America. Because in South Africa, you had to take a really good history. You had to examine patients. We didn't have all the money to do these expensive tests. In America, it was all about the blood work and the EKG and all the tests, and I was very disillusioned. And I had heard about this acupuncture clinic that was doing detox acupuncture near the hospital. So I thought, well, I'm going to go check it out, because I don't want to be a doctor here. So I went to check out this acupuncture clinic. This is 1984, and I walk into this room, and there are about 50 heroin addicts sitting quietly with needles in their ears. And I went, oh, holy shit, this is interesting, because here are these patients sitting quietly, and in the hospital, I'm seeing the same type of addicts, and they're pulling out their IVs, and they're swearing at you, and they're very difficult patients to deal with. You probably don't have any experience with heroin addicts, but they're very tough patients. So I thought, well, this is interesting. And I went to speak to the guy who ran the clinic, who was this hippie psychiatrist, who was also a big lefty. And I told him my story, and he loved that I came from South Africa, and we were chatting. And he said to me, well, you can come study here whenever you want. You need to do your residency to get your license, but the fact that I was an MD interested in it, because no MDs were doing that in those days. He said, this is great. Come, you can be a student here, do whatever you want. So for 3 years during my residency, I was doing my residency in the hospital, where I was treating acutely ill crisis care patients, which is what we do in Western medicine in the hospital. And at the same time, I was going to the Chinese medicine clinic. And over there, people were coming in with headaches, and they couldn't poop, and they were tired. The same problems I was seeing at the GP clinic in Johannesburg, in Paul's clinic. And there I was seeing that the Chinese medicine was working. And I realized early on in the mid-80s that the future of medicine would be some combination of the two, because what Chinese medicine was good at and was helping, Western medicine was useless at. And Chinese medicine wasn't particularly good at treating acute cardiac emergencies, acute pneumonias, asthmatic attacks. So it was pretty obvious that the future would be some combination. So after my residency, I went on this journey of discovery. I started studying acupuncture more, Chinese medicine, herbs, meditation, nutrition, and that was it. In those days, you had to find your own teachers, and I found incredible meditation teachers, yoga teachers, unbelievable acupuncture teachers who've been my mentors since then. They were one of the first teachers in America in Chinese medicine. They wrote a classic book, Between Heaven and Earth, a guide to Chinese medicine. So I sought out teachers, and I found incredible teachers and mentors who I became friendly with, and they mentored me in all these different disciplines. And over the years, you develop different skills and different types of knowledge and systems, and you combine it and you create your own medicine. So that's the short story.
Wow, what a story of someone who continually is learning and developing and growing, and saw the future of medicine. Although here in South Africa, Dr. Lipman, it doesn't seem that the future of medicine has hit here, because there's not many medical doctors with a foundation and the training that will combine Chinese medicine or combine herbs or combine yoga or meditation. They see it as very alternative and very complementary. In fact, many of them, see it as quackery. They see it as hogwash. There's no research, no science. So, how can you encourage the medical doctors in South Africa? Because it seems like I'm not sure if it was nature or nurture in your case. Was it your parents, or was it a genetic sort of just continual curious nature that you had, not just to accept the status quo of a Western medical degree, but to keep on learning? Was it nature or nurture?
I think it's probably nurture. Growing up in South Africa during apartheid, the system is rotten. So I knew the political system was rotten. I knew the economic system was rotten. The justice system was rotten. It was sort of, I came from a very left-wing family. So for me, the medical system was just another rotten system. Why do you believe another system that is not working for most people and is not? So it was pretty easy for me to question the system. And I came to America, it was the same thing. It was probably even worse. So I didn't want to be part of the system. So it's probably nurture, maybe nature. What I will say to doctors is, Chinese medicine actually was very informative in the way I think. What's happened, unfortunately, in South Africa, to what I see with doctors, is you do get some doctors questioning the system. You get Tim Noakes, but in that world, but they're still coming from a very Western perspective. Chinese medicine taught me to think differently. Chinese medicine taught me to see a symptom as a pointer to some imbalance, to look for the root cause of disease. Chinese medicine taught me to it's about improving function, that there's a spectrum between illness and health. It's not just, you're not either healthy or diseased. So I think I was lucky enough to be brainwashed in another system, or to be taught another way of seeing the body. I was lucky to have incredibly brilliant, smart teachers who taught me how to think, not just to follow. So I was lucky with that. And then, in America, what's happened is functional medicine has taken off, which is a real combination of Chinese medicine and Western medicine. It uses the biochemistry and the physiology of Western medicine and the research, but it uses also the concepts of Chinese medicine about improving function and creating balance. So functional medicine has sort of created an operating manual for doctors in America, and it hasn't really got to. So South Africa, you still, low carb, and it's a sort of very narrow-minded way of looking at stuff. Not that I'm against I eat a low carb diet. I promote, for the most part, a low carb diet, but it's still a limited way of seeing things. And so you don't have a functional medicine force there, unfortunately, over here. The good thing about Americans, they're open, they like new things. There's a big celebrity culture who tend to be into the stuff before the regular people are, and then they influence people. So it's been, I've been lucky to be able to do what I think is good medicine and create a following. I do think it's harder in South Africa because you don't have the big subculture that supports it. In America, we have that, and it's a powerful subculture. So we can live in our own little ecosystem out of the medical system. I think it's harder for doctors to do that in South Africa.
No, and I agree. And, I'm a big student of Chinese medicine. I think it really has its place. It really looks at root causes, treating patients, very, very personalized sort of treatments. I just, I would hope that it would just grow in different cultures all over the world, but it doesn't seem so. It's not easily as accepted in certain Western cultures. But hopefully with time and more of the research coming out of significant universities, English-speaking universities, things may change, because the research
is changing. Yeah, there's no question it's changing, because we've been lucky enough. The father of functional medicine, Jeff Bland, who actually has come to South Africa to teach. He has been very instrumental in sort of being on the forefront of change. He was talking about inflammation way before inflammation became an issue. He was talking about so many things. So I think there are more and more research studies happening. There are more and more younger doctors getting into this, and there's a shift here. I mean, things are changing, so it'll come to South Africa. Is it going to be 5 years or 10 years? I'm not sure. It will come. There's no question.
Great. I do want to know really how you've just tapped into different communities. You've got mentors. 95% of the medical fraternity don't have mentors, or they don't have mentees. You've been a lifelong learner. Is that something that you just said, I'm going to be tapping into people's knowledge and resource? Many medical doctors here in SA, they do their degree, that's what they do, or they become surgeons, and that's what they do, and that's how they do it, and they carry on doing it. But you seem to have, found mentors, or seek them out, or spent a lot of time and energy with mentors.
Yeah. So, I think what happens is in our medical training, we get brainwashed to think that this is the only way. I suppose I was lucky to come across these brilliant people who I realized were really smart and influenced me. I became friendly with them, and you realize that you get smart doctors, that they have knowledge but not wisdom, and in seeking out different ways to improve myself, and improve ways that I can help my patients, I realized that these wisdom traditions and these wise people had a lot to teach me. So I wasn't really attached to I'm still not attached to my medical training. I'm just attached to whatever helps people. And I find I've learned more from my yoga teacher, who happens to be English and happens to just be a brilliant guy, and my Chinese medicine teachers, who are brilliant, and Jeff Bland, who's not a doctor. Most of my real teachers have not been doctors. So to me, medicine is just another aspect of life. I've been searching a long time. It started with drugs, and when I realized, drugs can just get you somewhere. So far, I moved on to bettering myself and changing my mind. And so this is the way it is in most cultures, actually. It's just our medical training that's different. So I don't think this is that different. It's only different because
I salute you. I salute you and the books you've written. I love your book, How to Be Well, Eat, Sleep, Move, Protect, Unwind, Connect. Incredible sort of just principles. Can you take us, through it slowly? I think the mandala was just something that just was incredible. I mean, just how you just were weaving that into the story. Tell us about the mandala, the 6 sort of pillars that you wrote that book on.
Sure. So I, for many, many years, was always trying to understand Chinese medicine from a Western perspective. So I spent years and years and years struggling to, because when you learn Chinese medicine, it's a completely different way of seeing the body, but it's the same body. So I spent years and years trying to understand what are meridians, what is energy, you get to understand that from a Western perspective, energy may be just mitochondria, or talking about the same thing, or meridians or fascial systems. So what I did with my latest book, or the last one that's been published, is I took my Western knowledge and I tried to overlay it on a sort of Eastern perspective. And I quite influenced by Tibetan Buddhism and mandalas. In my office, I have medicine, medicine mandalas. I have, Anyway, I'm being influenced by Tibetan medicine and mandalas. And in Tibetan medicine, and mandala is something you actually meditate on, and it's something that can be influential for people. So I thought if I overlay my knowledge and put it into a concept like a mandala, where people can, I know it was a high-minded thing, could actually meditate on their health. So that's sort of what I did. I just try to switch it around.
Great.
And I put, in a mandala, you have something in the center, so that's you, because you should be in charge of your health, and you have 4 directions. Anyway, it is a whole. I was playing around with
great
different ways of understanding things.
Excellent. I know that you've spoken a lot, different podcasts that I've listened to about toxicity and protecting yourself. Tell us a little bit more about sort of those toxins from glyphosate, even protecting yourself probably from non-native electromagnetic fields. What have you learned recently from a protection point of view that could be really helpful to the listeners?
Right. So one of the rings, one of the key, you talk about eat, sleep, move, unwind, or relax. And one of them is also protect, because in Western medicine, in Western culture, we don't realize the consequences of all the chemicals and the toxins that we are exposed to. And toxins can be chemical, but it could be stress, it could be electromagnetic radiation, as you point out. And in America in particular, although I think it's gotten worse in South Africa, when I grew up, wasn't such an issue. In South Africa, now it's become more of an issue. So from an American perspective, and you can probably determine how much in South Africa, we eat so many chemicals, and the food is injected with chemicals, food is sprayed with chemicals, the water is full of chemicals, the air is polluted. And then the electromagnetic radiation, as you talk about. So we're exposed to all these toxins, and we need to develop ways of protecting ourselves from them, because they are the reality of life. And so, what we call organic food now should just be normal food. But because we put all chemicals on, when we don't put chemicals on, it's called organic. So it's a bit of a crazy system. And you mentioned glyphosate. In America in particular, I don't think it's an issue in South Africa, but I don't know. Glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, which is used for genetically modified organisms, and which Bayer just bought Monsanto, which makes Roundup, and has just spent a couple of $1 billion trying to settle lawsuits, because one of the things it causes is cancer. But anyway, glyphosate, which is this herbicide, is not only used in America for genetically modified organisms, it's sprayed on crops here to dry them quicker. So most people in America are eating this herbicide, glyphosate, on the food, which gets baked into the food, not even knowing it, because it's more efficient for farmers to sell their produce. And glyphosate not only is a carcinogen, but it's an antibiotic. It's a registered antibiotic. So you eating a food you're eating foods that are sprayed with a carcinogen and an antibiotic, and it's permeated the American food system. So that's why I make such an issue of it. I'm not sure what the story is in South Africa, but I think South Africa is heading the same way. It's always gets what America
gets. Real problem,
gets.
yeah. It's all on the shelves. It's been sprayed. It's been used in farms. I don't know if it's to the same degree as in the States, but it's not. It's all over. From Johannesburg to Cape Town. I know that Dr. Stephanie Seneff has got kids in Cape Town. She's done air and water samples in America. In certain states, 75% of the rain and the water samples had glyphosate in. So I think, I don't think we've even got the standards and the measurements, or people even worried about a third world country like South Africa to even measure those, levels of glyphosate. But I think it's a significant issue. I know the farming community, they all use it, unless it's an organic farm, but there are far and few organic farming, places in South Africa, just because the demand is, really low compared to the States. The demand here for organic things is like maybe 1% of the population that even knows about it or can afford it. It's your upper echelon, and that's a problem. And sort of the new money that's going to the sort of new different creeds and cultures, they're not really concerned about their health yet. They're not really worried about their health and wellness. And I think it's only going to come on a later basis. But how do we detox from those things, Doc? How do we get rid of those things?
Well, ideally, you don't want to try put as many of them into your body as possible, but sometimes getting rid of it can be tricky. I use a lot of nutrients. I know supplements get a bad rap here as well, in South Africa especially. And they're very expensive. It's crazy. I mean, I remember in South Africa, supplements are ridiculously expensive. But, you know, we use certain supplements. I'm a big believer in optimizing gut health, because, you know, your gut is sort of the entry point. Your gut is like your internal skin. So I'm a big believer in optimizing your gut health and your microbiome, because that'll protect you somewhat from a lot of this food getting into your system. But you know, it can be tricky. You know, there are some types of herbal supplements for the gut, for the liver, to help you rid yourself of some of these chemicals. But ideally, you want to try avoid putting them into your body in the first place. So, you know, a water filter is what I recommend over here. We recommend people eat organic produce as much as possible.
Infrared sauna, Doc. I know you had Dr. Terry Walls on, and she's
major fan of an infrared. I have an infrared sauna myself. Yeah, I'm a major fan of saunas. I think that's another way of getting rid of some of these toxins, amongst other things. I think saunas have many beneficial effects. You said you're a biohacker. I think infrared sauna. I've just finished a book. It's coming out. It's actually, you can get it. It's an ebook, so maybe you can get it in South Africa. It just came out this week on how to age well and build immune resilience. And saunas are one of those things you do. You know, extreme heat, especially alternated with cold, is actually really good for the aging process and getting. If you want to talk about biohacking, I think saunas are part of that. You know, there's a concept called hormesis. I don't know if you've ever talked about hormesis. So if you're a biohacker, you should. The hormesis is basically a small stress on your body, which actually has positive effects. So chronic, unremitting stress takes its toll on the body, but small little spurts of stress, like, you know, like an infrared sauna, and then maybe jumping into a cold shower or plunge stresses your body, which causes, you know, positive benefits. High intensity interval training, same thing, short bursts of stress. Fasting, intermittent fasting, short bursts of stress. All these things are actually good for your body. And as you get older, you become an old fart like me, they become more important in the aging process. So, you know, I'm a believer in all, you know, whatever you can do to optimize your body's functions. It's not just about diet. I think diet is important. But how do you optimize in other ways? And I think trying to trigger this hormesis effect in your body is extremely powerful.
I heard about infrared sauna from a company called Sauna Space. They got a very low EMF sauna, and Dr. Terry Walls, that's the sauna that she uses just to stay away from the electromagnetic fields. We brought it into South Africa with a lot of success, and so it's something that I advocate to my tribe here. I want to pivot now and talk about community. I interviewed James Maskell, who wrote The Community Cure, who's good friends with Dr. Jeffrey Bland. He talks about health coaching and health coaches, health advocates, almost the person in between the medical doctor and the patient, because there seems to be a huge chasm and divide between, you know, medical doctors being so busy. They've got 10, 15 minutes of consult. They're often not trained, or you know, they don't have the, you know, what you had, the curiosity and the eagerness to learn, or they find they don't have enough time to go and do functional medicine or whatever it is. Tell me about the role of a health coach or a health advocate in regards to patients.
Sure. So I know James well. James actually also has South African connections. So I actually initiated the whole health coach use of, or the use of health coaches in doctors' offices. James got that from me. So many years ago, I had employed someone that approached me to be a health coach to help me with something else. And I realized, well, this is interesting, because when I used to see a patient, I used to say, okay, stop eating gluten, stop eating sugar, yada, yada, yada. Here's your list, goodbye. And then this woman came into my practice and she was helping people implement it. And I realized then, this is many, many years ago, that health coaches could be very important in my practice. So I started employing and using health coaches, which has helped me tremendously. So I will see a patient with a health coach, and then the health coach will sit down with the patient and help implement the changes that I recommend, give them all the resources, how to do it, the recipes, guide them through it. So it's a fantastic addition to my practice. It's probably in the last 10, maybe 10 years, I don't know how long. But yeah, so I started doing it, and now it's interesting. It's become quite a big thing, which is great. So I'm all for health coaches. In fact, all the ones that I've trained, they probably know more about how to deal with a lot of these problems than most doctors.
Yeah.
So they're great. I love, most of them are youngish women, who are just so eager and interested in learning. And the patients love them. I love them. My staff, everyone it's just great working with them. They're just keen, and they want to help, and they know what they don't know. So they fantastic assets to a doctor's practice. I don't know what the story is in South Africa with health coaches, but
no, we're very far behind. And in talking to James, being on the podcast, and we did a Facebook Live, he's talking about group visits and health coaching. It's very, very far behind, and they don't partner up with medical doctors or functional medicine practices at all. But I'm hoping that in the future it'll go, because speaking to James and reading his book, Mark Hyman said the greatest, force of change that can bring about anything is community. And I think part of your community is your health coach to help drive that process of sustained change. The Chris Kresser Institute, the ADAPT coaching that he does. So I'm trusting to get a whole bunch of health coaches trained, what sort of certification we can do and how they can plug into the South African system. I'm not really sure, because they're not really regarded yet here in South Africa. It's quite a challenge.
Yeah, there's two health coaching organizations, both of which I teach on. One is IIN, Integrative Institute of Nutrition. I'm one of the teachers. And then Mind Body Green started, because it's become so popular, also both of them you can do online. So I teach at both of them. I'm one of the teachers at both of them. Those are courses people can do online. Okay. They probably end up being expensive for South Africans because the rand is so weak. But you can do these courses online.
Yeah, good. Well, I just want to pivot here to a bit of biohacking, because one of the sort of speaking to Dr. Joseph McCullough and his view on CGM, continuous glucose monitoring, as well as Prof. Noakes we had on a Facebook Live and on the podcast, the role of this continued glucose monitor with regards to personalizing your health journey. I've been wearing one now for probably over a year. I've learned a lot. I've learned more about my nutrition from wearing the CGM than probably anything. Even from the green smoothie that I thought was incredible, filled with kale and spinach and cucumber, my glucose would shoot to 9 or 10. It was, just terrible. I added some fat in, and I added a bit of coconut oil and some eggs, and all of a sudden it didn't spike. It didn't even go up to sort of 6.5, around there. Tell me your thoughts on CGM, and is it the way of the future in terms of personalizing nutrition?
Yeah, I definitely think it's the wave of the future. I think it's one aspect of nutrition. I think it's an important aspect. I personally haven't got one. I should get one, but my experience has been with a lot of my patients who we get them for. A lot of the foods that they thought or that we think don't spike your sugar, spikes their sugar. Now, where, and it's different for everyone. This is what's so interesting, that someone will eat the same meal and it will spike their sugar. The next person eats the same meal and it doesn't. Now, does that happen to have something to do with the microbiome? We're not sure, although there are 1 or 2 studies now coming out showing that your microbiome is going to affect how your body metabolizes the foods, not only carbs, and whether your sugar will spike. So yes, I do think continuous glucose monitoring is going to be just a normal part of the future of medicine, no question. That's what I like about the biohack. I have some problems with the biohacking world. It's a little bit too masculine and aggressive, but I think we've got a lot. to learn in Western medicine from tracking. I like the concept of tracking because, you learn a lot about yourself, and especially with continuous glucose monitoring. Much to my surprise, I found that what we thought would spike sugars on that may not sometimes. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So it started me questioning my nutrition philosophy too, or what you recommend. So yes, I do think continuous glucose monitoring is the future. I'm pleased to see it's in South Africa, and yeah, it's exciting. I mean, there are a lot of things that you can measure without going to the doctor. I mean, I like the idea of taking a lot of this out of the medical office, which I think is possible.
Yeah.
And with some of that biohacking technology and knowledge, you can do it. So yeah, I do think some combination of the biohacking world and bit of a softer Chinese medicine approach and then Western medicine, I think that's going to be an interesting form of medicine. Yeah.
What about sleep data? I wear my Aura ring, every single night. I look at my REM sleep. Yeah, good. Yeah. And deep sleep. You think it's really important?
My Aura ring. Yeah. I like it. I mean, it doesn't, now that I've been wearing it for a while, I know when I'm sleeping well. I think it's interesting. I like it. I'm not saying I don't like it. I'm actually working with a sleep company, well, we were until this COVID, on developing a better way of measuring sleep. I was trying to get them to some way, measure brain waves, which I think would be more accurate, because, we're not sure, what this is measuring may or may not be accurate. We don't really know. I mean, when I meditate in the morning, this reads it as sleep. So I think this is, a wave in a way. I don't think it's the final. Continuous glucose monitoring is much more accurate. I mean, this I'm not 100% sure of, although I like the idea of it. In fact, the basketball players are actually in America are now wearing it because it can, you can, if it picks up your pulse rate going up, you can maybe determine if you're getting sick early. So I think it's very interesting, and they are getting better and better. I actually, I'd speak to the CEO, but I like it. I like the idea of it. I'm not convinced that it's the best way to measure sleep and how accurate their deep sleep and REM sleep measurements are, but I do like the idea of it. I'm not knocking it.
I think what I've learned with it is it's probably not accurate, but it's probably precise. And there's a difference between precision and accuracy, that if it makes the same errors, that's what you want to see. You want to look at the trends.
Patterns. Yeah, I agree. I think patterns, yeah. I think those are helpful. Now, look, I wear it myself, so I'm intrigued. Listen, I'm intrigued by the biohacking world. I'm a little bit, I know a lot of these guys, and they so boom, boom, boom. It's not my way of seeing the world, but I like what they're bringing to the table. It's the same as, you said, I like continuing to learn. And I think there is something that we can learn from the biohacking world and bring to the table. I just think there are probably psychologically or mentally healthier ways of doing it for some people, because for some people wearing an Oura ring will make them more nervous, and it has a negative effect. So you've got to just be careful. You've got to be smart about how you use all these. That's all. I'm not against them. I'm intrigued, and I think we're going to somehow incorporate them in. I'm not sure how just yet. It's early days.
Well, I've got two last questions. I know we're coming to the end of the show, but last one, and you can just give us a brief answer. Is this carnivore diet is sort of growing in popularity? Dr. Paul Saladino, a lot of research there. What's happening? Is there a place for the carnivore diet? And that's not a meat diet. It's a carnivore diet. It's head to, nose to tail, not meat. It's the true carnivore diet.
Yeah, I think there's a place for it. I mean, I actually recommend it occasionally. I think probably its benefits are removing the foods that sometimes trigger problems. So to me, it's more about the microbiome and the gut. So if your gut is completely, when someone's gut is completely off whack, sometimes what we consider healthy vegetables can be triggers, whether it's lectins or high FODMAP foods, we're not sure what. But I think why the carnivore diet seems to help is it's eliminating a lot of these foods that we are triggering inflammation in the body, which is often just a temporary thing. They're not, so, I'll use a carnivore diet for a month and then maybe reintroduce foods, but at the same time, I'm learning to, heal the gut. And this is where I have a problem with when I said some of those doctors, they see it very, this is the way, carnivore diet. We in functional medicine, or what I do, is a much more holistic perspective. If we use a carnivore diet, we also look into to create more balance in the gut. Try treat a leaky gut. Try create balance in the microbiome. So I think the carnivore diet can play a part. I don't know if it's a healthy long-term diet. It's not something I would recommend long-term. We know from the research now. I've just written a book on longevity, which is it's an ebook. You can get it. As you get older, eating too much animal protein actually is not good for your longevity genes. It stimulates one of them called mTOR, which is, you don't want to grow cancers. And, when you're younger, increasing your mTOR gene is fine because you want to grow. But once you're in your 40s and 50s, I'm 65, I don't want to eat all that meat because it's not good for longevity. So it all depends what stage of life you're in, what's going on in your system. To me, there's no one right diet for everyone, and there's no one right diet at any particular, it changes with time. So that's where I have a problem with, the low carb, the dogma of a low carb diet, of a carnivore diet, of a vegan diet. I think they're all full of shit, excuse my language, because they may be right for some people, and they do. And I use, I eat for the most part a low carb diet, and I recommend a carnivore diet temporarily for some people. Is it the answer for everyone and everything? No. And I think people see things through their lenses. I tend to try and see a much broader lens, and that I think comes from my Chinese medicine mentors. They taught me, one thing Ephraim always used to say: what works for one, something can work for one person, and for the second person it won't do anything, and for the third person it'll do violence. And that was a word he used. It helps someone. It does nothing for the second person. It actually harms the third person. I think that's a healthier way to look at it, to say the carnivore diet is going to work for everyone. Does it work for some people? Yeah, absolutely. I have no doubt. I've seen it, but it's not something I think is a long-term solution.
Right. So what you're really saying, it's personalized. People have to work at their health. They've got to know what works, what doesn't. Obviously, exactly. Markers like CGM and inflammation in the body, the basic markers to see health are crucial, but it's really about personalized nutrition. Fantastic. Absolutely. Last question, Doc, because I know your time is precious, and this is what I've asked all my guests, it seems like people don't maintain and sustain their transformation. The research shows 80 to 95% of people that lose weight will gain it within 5 years and even more. Give us your top pieces of advice for people to sustain and maintain their transformation health habits.
Right. It's about creating healthy habits. It's not, I don't teach people about a diet. We teach people how to eat in a way that's sustainable for you. So anything that becomes a habit will sustain you. They say neurons that fire together wire together. So if you do something over and over again, it becomes a habit. Like meditation, you've got to keep doing it and it becomes a habit. You just got to persist. I talk about it in How to Be Well, how to create health. It's all about creating healthy habits. It's about doing something over and over again. You don't want to feel deprived. You want to enjoy it. And be kind to yourself. It's not about, I think being kind to oneself is really important. So, it's not, you got to try something, see what works. And if you fall off the wagon, you dust yourself off and you get back on the wagon. Having a support system and a tribe or a health coach, whatever, is really helpful. So you need to find your tribe, find the people that, think the way you do, and be kind to yourself.
Great. So tribe, healthy habits, and being kind to yourself. That's Dr. Frank Lipman. Where can people find you, Dr. Frank?
drfranklipman.com.
Okay, great. Fantastic. Thank you for being the inspiration that you are. When I look at you, how many books you've written, the medical circles that you sort of are in. Well done to you. 65, you look like you're 50. So incredible achievements. Well done. And hopefully maybe in the future we can connect. Before COVID, I was in the States at least once a year. I've got my mentor there in Florida and Chicago. But thanks so much and all the best to you. Keep writing, keep journaling, keep on doing your podcast. I think it's Tuning into Wellness or Tuning to Wellness. So thank you so much for everything that you've done.
Okay, and thank you and good luck. Keep up the good work in South Africa.